what does the buyer's journey look like? Does the buyer know who the heck you are? Because that's marketing's job, is to take you from who the heck is this company to, oh, okay, I have an idea of who this company is. And then sales is really the one that's kind of take that handoff to that customer to say, I know who you are, to say, I feel like you can solve a problem for me right now.
You.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Outreach.io. Every revenue team suffers a sales execution gap, the gap between the potential revenue of an organization and the actual revenue it achieves. To innovate, grow, and win, leaders must embrace technology to improve their team's sales execution. When organizations close the gap and execute at their full potential, they win more deals with less effort, forecast without guesswork, and deliver a better customer experience. Over 5,000 global customers trust Outreach as their sales execution platform. Find out why Outreach is the right solution for your team at click.outreach.io/side.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashley Early.
And I'm Ryan Woodard.
And I am super excited today. We are joined by the fantastic Ed Porter. Ed is a Fractional Chief Revenue Officer, helping companies align revenue teams and fix revenue problems. He is the founder of Blue Chip CRO and spent his career in all functions of sales and revenue, from marketing to sales, operations, and customer experience. Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to talk about a lot of things, specifically about kind of what's going on in the world today. So thank you for having me, Ashley and Ryan.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us.
We had a fun little kind of pre-start. So I think this is going to be a little spicy, but just to kind of start off the same way, for people who aren't familiar with you, just tell us a little bit about your sales journey.
Yeah, I like to say I oopsed into sales, and I kind of grew up in the outsourced contact center world. And it was a little bit of sink or swim. I found myself about 23 years old, overseeing almost 1,100 people across several different locations, and didn't know what the heck I got myself into, and kind of progressed on that journey of leadership and management, and then went to work for a software company that was formed by people that I worked with in the contact center space. And that was really my first time of trying to figure out sales. They initially wanted me to
company?
lead.
I'm in the contact center space, and now I'm curious.
Oh, okay. So it was Call Copy, which got acquired by InContact, which got acquired by NICE.
Yep.
So that's the level up. So I started at Call Copy, was heading up their channel team, and they were selling to customers direct, and they wanted to build a channel. And the owners said, you've got contact center leadership experience, you know the inside and out of the buyer we're selling to, you can help channel partners integrate our solution into them as the buyer. So that was their thought, which I thought made sense. But I even remember telling them, can I have a different title than channel sales? And because I had really fought it. I didn't want to be, I was that school of thought of the epitomized car salesman, and I didn't really want to be attached to it. And then it was during that time where I embraced it. I went on a learning journey, learned channel, understood sales, understand how to implement not only partners, but then how to implement users as well. And then really embraced it there. Then went to go on to build a inside sales team for a large field sales manufacturing distribution company. And that taught me a ton about learning what inside sales was, and knowing that I was kind of my own siloed department. So our teams really did a lot of their own marketing, their own selling, their own prospecting, their own servicing, and a lot of times. So I started to really learn more of what's now kind of the revenue organization, and understand how marketing, sales, and customer service really go together. Then I went to become a CRO of a company where the goal was to get the company acquired, and the company got acquired, and I figured out what I was going to do. And 3 years later, I'm still figuring it out. So right now I'm just trying to market myself as a Fractional Chief Revenue Officer, and really working with clients to understand the full gamut of what a revenue organization is, and how each of these different departments should not be siloed, and what alignment really means. It's more than just a fluff word. So that's where I'm at today, and what brought us here.
That's awesome.
Honestly, I'm super curious because you brought up like the silo departments and the alignment and stuff. And something I've heard a lot, I remember even people doing early in my sales journey, and I thought it was kind of an interesting. I was like, okay, I don't really understand why you're doing this, but okay, I'll bite. Instead of doing quarterly business reviews, like those quarterly, everyone meets up and presents their pipeline for the quarter, they do quarterly franchise reviews to try and make the reps feel enabled, like they're running their own little mini business sort of thing. I'm very of a split mind on that, completely random. And I'm curious what you think about that.
So I think I guess I would ask you 20 questions on this topic, and I'd want to understand, is it just this part where they're feeling empowered, or what's the rest of the business like? And a day-to-day of a particular rep, like, are they empowered every day to make decisions, to understand their own kind of customer territories or pricing models or distribution methods? Are they really empowered to do what they're being told to do? And if so, then I can see some merit in that. The flip side to that is, even in a franchise world, which was one of the businesses I studied to try and figure out, do I want to go buy a franchise and be a franchise owner? The answer was no, but I went down the path. And even in that model, franchising companies are going very far to try and help onboard and support and enable their franchisees. So I think it's a little bit less of maybe 30 years ago, where the nomenclature of a salesperson was be the CEO of your business, which was a little bit of lone wolf mentality, a little bit go at it on your own. Whereas now I think we're seeing a lot more of a support and enablement. How can the company support an employee to be successful, whether it's a frontline or whether it's an executive? I believe that support needs to be there. So that's a little bit of a soapbox to say, I like the thought behind it. And I'd like to see are there other mechanisms in that business that help to demonstrate somebody is empowered to make their own decision, to do their own thing without having to be told, live inside this box. So at first glance, yeah, that's really interesting and eye-opening.
You said something that kind of caught my attention when you say live inside this box, and one kind of contentious friction sometimes within a sales org is the business development side and the deals that are actually don't have any channel partner involved, and then channel, because you have to split some of that revenue. How do you see those teams like aligning, and do you think it's like useful for organizations to use some of their internal resources to maybe hand over some deals to channel that maybe don't fit their ICP? Or how do you see those teams like kind of working together in unison the best?
Yeah, great question. The whole idea of channel sales versus direct sales is, unfortunately, there's no right answer ever, but it all comes down to, how do you define and clarify things? There's foundational things to live by, whether it's, like you said, ICP, certain qualifications. But ultimately, you're going to have people that are going to go rogue, or that they're going to fight it. And I think that's okay, because it's not very black and white. There's tons of gray area. What I learned years ago in building this program, and I won't say it's the end all be all, but it's have a real clear definition of what goes through the channel and what goes through direct. And that's step one. And I'd say step two is also, how do you handle multiple channel partners in a deal? How do you support them as a manufacturer? Because that can get dicey too. Are they both getting the same type of discount? Are they different partner levels? What's the scope of, are you incenting with marketing development funds or not? And it can get real dicey when you start getting into pricing complexity. So having some kind of charter, and it does charter as in like not 100 pages, but it could be very clear with a few bullets on one page of, go down the path of, let's make some decision-making criteria to try and give us the answer. And then if we can weed out 60, 70, 80% of those, great, we've done a good job. But we got to be open to have conversations, and it can't be aligned to my compensation. And that has to be rid of any of the discussion, and it has to be clearly aligned to the charter, and then continuing to improve that. So I don't know if that's really an answer, as much as that it's just more of a discussion of how do you follow those lines and create that autonomy. So to Ashley, your client's example, or the example you gave about the franchising thing, I think that's great opportunity to say, how do those conflicts get handled? Because you'll still have sales conflicts, even without channel selling, you still have sales conflicts, territory conflicts. I'm selling to the buyer at Microsoft in one division, somebody else is selling to the buyer in another division, and they're crossing, like, it winds up creating a lot of turmoil. So I think the definition is helpful, clearly communicating that to everybody, and then knowing that when a conflict exists, we got to talk openly about it with as many parties involved as possible and figure out the solution. That's my political answer.
No, I actually do the same thing. And I encourage people to write it out. I call it an appeals process. So it's write the rules as strict as you can, but always have an appeals process if the rules don't fit or if the rules don't result in the right outcome. Have an appeals process for, hey, this is a unique situation. Here's what I propose. Here's why it's the right thing by the customer. And here's how make sure it doesn't hurt anyone. But like, have a written appeals process. Like, here's how to say, hi, I followed the rules and it's still not giving what I feel is the fair outcome, either for myself or for the client, and have a way to get it reviewed. If you're just a little bit transparent about having what that process is, I've found people are a lot more compliant with the rules too. Because the first rule of the appeals process is, did you follow the rules? If you broke the rules, you don't get to appeal. If you follow the rules, you can file an appeal and you'll probably get it. But it all starts with just making sure everyone knows that the appeals process exists, how to access it, what the turnaround time is like. Then people kind of get there, and then it comes to the point of, like, to Ed's point, it's like it has to be a discussion. And there's so much of sales that happens in those gray areas. I mean, that's where we make that's the fun, almost in a weird way. Like, it's great to have someone come in inbound hot and knock them down, but you don't go have a glass of champagne at the end of that. You have a glass of champagne at the one that you grinded out and you found this nuanced thing and you took advantage of this pricing deal and you had this conversation with product and you pushed through legal to get, that's the one that at the end you feel like, I earned this thing.
Yeah. And that fits exactly in line to when I go into a lot of client engagements today, and like, what does revenue alignment mean? And it's a little bit fluff on words, but this is exactly the epitome of this is a foundation of communication is, first off, let's get these people talking. Let's get sales and marketing talking. And I think the bigger alignment is really in marketing and customer success. So that's a curveball we can go into later, but those three teams just need to be hand in hand. If sales is recreating their own things, their own marketing, their own outbound campaigns, their own messaging without any assistance from customer success or marketing, then that's a silo. And those things need to happen. That integration happens through communication, whether it's huddles regularly, daily, weekly with leadership teams, it's one-off meetings, but those are the things that is communication really does solve all your problem. It really is an easy fix. The hard part is then going to execute the communication practices.
Yeah, that's I won't say it's the story of my life, but that's been kind of one of the things I've experienced as an SDR and then an SDR manager. It's just those we talk about all these siloed data solutions and we break that down, but then it's like, how are we selling this idea of breaking down silos? But internally, we have all these different silos in our sales org, and everybody's judging things differently. So, marketing's looking at MQLs and how many qualified leads they bring to you that are a marketing qualified lead. But then sales is looking at, SQLs. Do they meet firmographic data for ICP and all these different kind of metrics? Do you think there is a unifying metric across like customer success, sales, and marketing that they all can kind of revel in, I guess?
So I think this is a great example to see a level of how aligned teams are. Because what you talk about is, you're talking about this from a very company-driven journey. When you think about NQL, sales, SQL, SAL, moving down the pipe, that's very much, I'm taking a buyer through this. That's got to flip. And that's really got to understand, is that the buyer's journey? What does the buyer's journey look like? Does the buyer know who the heck you are? Because that's marketing's job, is to take you from who the heck is this company to, oh, okay, I have an idea of who this company is. And then sales is really the one that's kind of take that handoff to that customer to say, I know who you are, to say, I feel like you can solve a problem for me right now.
Trust you.
Yeah, and then trust is a good one of, Trust doesn't have to be, years of a relationship. Trust can be as simple as do what you say you're going to do. Once you do that in a very simplest form, you're starting those building blocks. So to go back to your point, Ryan, of if we take this above metrics, and metrics sometimes get us in the way of kind of creating our own silo of marketing. I'm MQL, that's it. Well, we got to start looking beyond that to say, well, what is an MQL? And what are we really trying to achieve with that? And I would really look at this to say, because I could argue all day long, lead sources, content types, they may score the same in Pardot or Marketo, but they are definitely not treated the same when sales gets a hold of them. So there's a disorientation there. So you can very easily see, are the departments focusing on what's in their purview of control, like an MQL, and then sales is going to say, well, yeah, I'm taking these 80 scored Pardot MQLs, and I'm not able to convert any of them. Well, why? Well, because somebody downloaded a white paper on the best, sales podcast to listen to, and all of a sudden they're ready to buy a sales solution. It just doesn't work that way. So those are a lot of the deeper conversations to say the higher level guide is really, how do you figure out company right size fit, company leads? And that often has to stem from the buyer of who is the buyer, where are they in their journey? And if we don't know, that's okay, let's go find out. And then you really understand, is the buyer facing a problem that we can solve? How clear is that problem? Is it a complete solve? Is it I'm going to reduce a metric for you, I'm going to improve a metric for you? We've got to get clear on what are these pain points the buyers are struggling with, and are we the solution? And then beyond that, that's very high level, but that's where everyone has to align to, it has to be about the buyer, and it has to be about what they're struggling with today, what's on fire, and are they in solution mode? This is very much behavioral-based interviewing. It happens in interviewing candidates. It happens the same way in interviewing prospects. Is we got to go down that path of like, how long has this been a problem? What have you done to solve it? Have you tried something and failed? Have you tried something and succeeded? If you could do it again, what would you do differently? And if you get your answers are they haven't done anything, then it's not big enough for them to want to solve it. We just got to say timing isn't right. So this is a soapbox, and I'm happy to talk more about this. But the indirect answer to your question is taking this a level above the KPIs and really focusing on the buyer and understanding, have we taken them through a journey? And I tend to follow the 5 whys that Trish Bertuzzi wrote in her book, The Sales Development Playbook, because those 5 whys are exactly how it's taken very from a buyer perspective of why should they listen to what you're saying is number 1. Why should they care about what you're saying is number 2. Why should they change is number 3. Why change to you is number 4. And then why now is number 5. You have to answer them sequentially. You can't go out of order. And if you go down that path, you're taking it completely from the buyer perspective. And at some point, you're a stopgap to say, hey, this probably isn't a fit. And it's discipline. It's all discipline.
Yeah, I got to read that book now. It's the 5 whys by...
Oh, no, it's a Sales Development Playbook by Trish Bertuzzi. Links in the comments. It's a must read for anyone, especially if you're in any sort of inside sales leadership. That's just one tiny nugget in that book of solid gold.
Yes, for sure.
But
I might actually have it, to be honest, now that I think about it. I might just remember, I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment now, so a lot of stuff is in a storage unit boxed up. So
yeah, I'm not, the AKA Ryan's getting a pass from Ashley to not read this immediately. She'll follow up with him in about 6 months once your brain is starting to come back to normal. So
yes, baby on the way, July 30th. Boom, boom.
Woo-hoo.
Be on the lookout.
I'm so excited for that. We need to start designing other side of sales baby onesies or something that we can start selling, start giving out to guests and stuff.
Need to get like a cold future cold caller onesie for.
Yes, there you go.
Get her, throw this headset on her and do a little pose, a little photo shoot.
Oh my goodness. So it's oh gosh, who was doing 6th Sense? I'm forgetting his name.
Ernest.
No,
Lucy?
one of my friends over at 6th Sense. He has he has 2 little boys, and his son Brady, he did a lot of photos early in the pandemic of Brady as SDR, like his junior SDRs. He was working the headset on.
Oh,
his
that's
awesome.
funny.
Mine are dogs. Those are my SDRs. Except customers don't really respond too well to like their approach of just yelling at them on the phone. It's really weird. I never
Yeah,
understand it.
You're using them wrong. The dogs are the closers.
Oh,
But someone's just
God.
always are holding up to the
Interesting.
camera and be like, look, puppy. Maybe I
Nice.
hold mine up. You can't do that. You just pivot your camera and go, look, doggo. Look at the giant sweet doggo.
So there's where you go. You use the tactics and the technology from Sendoso to open a door, and then you
think
use your
she's back
dogs
there.
to close it. All right, got
There
it.
she is,
There's the
back
sweet
there,
dogs. Well,
stretched out.
It's one of the new rules post, not post-COVID, because we're not post-COVID, but it's one of the new realities. Like, this is the rules. If you mention kids, if you mention dogs, you have to show them. This is the rule.
There you go.
Or
Yeah.
cats or whatever else. If you mention it, like, we're all embracing our real lives. And if you mention it, you have to show it if you're willing. If you're not, no big. Like, my boys are quiet right now, so I'm not pivoting the camera.
I wonder if I can get any of their attention to come up to me. We'll see. I'll have to mute myself and snap a couple times, see if they come up.
Yeah, we'll figure it. Well, to bring things a little bit more back to something a little less fun than dogs, Ed, I kind of want to pivot a little bit to kind of how you and I connected, because I think it's actually a really fun story, which is, oh gosh, I think we're looking at 6-8 months ago now. There was a list, one of the infinite number of listicles we see on LinkedIn or on blog posts, and we all understand why they're written, and we write them to, they do a lot of functional purposes to raise awareness, to get traffic, to get people to engage. We all understand the game. But all too often, these lists are the same people over and over and over again. And even as someone who is on those lists occasionally, it drives me a little bit nuts. I get equally annoyed when I'm on a list, it's the same 10 people on the list as it is when I'm not included on the list of 20 people. So it's a double-edged sword. But Ed, you jumped out to me specifically. I think we were loosely connected maybe, but there was a list that was posted up. I think it was influencers to follow. And I just kind of looked at it really quickly because one of my friends was tagged in it. And I looked in the comments, and you were the top comment. The top comment was something along the lines of, I'm really disappointed. There's only one woman and one person of color on this list, and it's the same person. And stereotypically, you are not the person that I would expect if I were to profile you based off your appearance to call that out publicly on a LinkedIn post, to have that be the top comment calling out, hey, this list isn't exactly diverse on a number of axes. And I reached out to you just to say, hey, thank you for saying that, because normally it's a woman saying, why aren't there more women involved? Or a person of color saying, why aren't there more people of color involved? And as we talked before this, change is hard and change has to come at every level. But what I really appreciated wasn't just, I said, hey, thanks for commenting, even though I wasn't involved. You responded by taking a lot of what I felt like authentic responsibility, given the privileges that you've been given. And I just wanted to ask you kind of what your philosophy is around when you call things out, what you call out, like, how do you think about these things?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think it started from a time where when I was in my 20s trying to build a team and looking at what do I want from a team. And I had the client that I had at the time was a pretty challenging client, not the client themselves, but the business that they were in. And I didn't have experience in this business, and I wanted to try and find people that had experience in the business because I didn't. So it started on this journey of, I need to find people not like me. And then the further I got down that road was more along the lines of, it's more about different walks of life. And a walk of life can mean many different things. It could be gender, it could be religion, it could be color of skin, it could be cultural upbringing, it could be heritage, environment, you name it. There's plenty of differences that exist in the world today. And I'm eager to learn from those. So this was an oops back then of just something that I started to understand. And then just the more I've been connected in different communities and tried to go seek down paths of learning, I'm hearing more and more talking about minorities in business, women in business, understanding diversity, beyond just a checklist of team composition, but really understanding what does it mean to have a diverse team. And I think diversity is important from color, gender, race, religion, political affiliation even, but then also just different experiences. So for me, I tend to not want to be, I'm not the troll, I'm not the instigator that, is quick to call somebody out, but I think there's times where I feel okay doing it. And there's other times where I message people separately. And it's just something that I see. And I always tell people, take it with a grain of salt, but here's what I see. I've tried to be this way a little bit more over the years of building teams, or when I go into client accounts at a previous company. When I was looking at building a team, it was the epitome of a bro culture, and it was a lot of young white men around in all the departments. And I went to one female who was over our marketing, and I said, would you just read this job description? Like, would you apply? What doesn't appeal to you? What screams yuck? And is there anything here that screams enticing? So we worked on it together, and we brought HR in as well. And we tried to work on a job description to figure out how do we entice people that are not just who we have today. And we were able to do that, and slowly but surely, but it starts there. And that was part of a solution or part of an action. And I can't take credit for that because I got that feedback from somebody else. And they said, have some people of color, have some women, have some older employees read the job description and see what speaks out to them positively or negatively. So it became a really good exercise, very exhaustive, but very rewarding at the end. So that's kind of my tangent there of I started, it happened because I wanted something specific from an experience that I didn't have, and I wanted to go find it. And then it started, trickling up from there on understanding how can differences in thought, how can differences in upbringing and really create different teams. And I love building teams that have an opinion, that want to debate. I don't want yes people. I want people that have a backbone, but then also aren't just saying something to say it, but have a reason for it. And that's the whole thing, is give me some logic. I don't care if it's good, just what's the reason why you think this way, and let's work through it. And I think those are how the best decisions are made. So that's really the starting point. And where specifically I went to call that out was not to be disrespectful as much as bring a little light to this. If we're talking influencers here, let's look at who are the same influencers, white men? Well, then who are we influencing? Same, probably white men. So it doesn't really move the needle in trying to create a better world.
Yeah, man, a lot to unpack there. One thing I can take from this that I didn't think about was having people from diverse backgrounds read the job description and give feedback. So I'm definitely going to implement that. That's like, we're talking gold here. That's some gold right there, guys. Definitely take that from it. Have you ever encountered any resistance on this journey from, I'm sure you have, but
yeah,
just curious
I'll
to
give,
get your feedback
yeah, that's
there.
good. I'll give you one example. I won't give the company, and the person has since retired, but there was a company I was in, we brought in a female executive, and I hadn't even met her. And I'm like, I think this is great. I had two of my best bosses in my whole life were two females that I, to this day, am in touch with, friends on Facebook, and have communication with, and I love them dearly. But I feel like they were some of the best leaders I've had. So I said, I'm really happy to have, a female executive on here. And the response he gave was, I don't see gender. And I just want to hire the right person. And my initial thought back then was, okay, I get where you're coming from. And maybe you're trying to come from a place that's, you're trying to find the right fit, but there's always going to be either a conscious or an unconscious bias. So if you don't see gender or you don't see color, then maybe you're missing the point. And actually, as of literally 2 days ago, when I was on a webinar, I wasn't familiar with this term until 2 days ago, microaggressions. And now I know what that is. And I'm starting to see that a little bit more of that's a response underneath that. So I'm learning that more, but that was kind of the first time where it struck me as a little odd to say, you don't see it. But the flip side to that is, well, you should. you should see it. Like, it should be intentional, and it should be something you seek out. Maybe you don't go down a path to hire one person that looks like this, but to hire a team that is diverse, and that should be the overarching goal. So you should see that. So that was kind of an experience that I faced back then that I thought was a little odd, and I hadn't experienced. Beyond that, other than hearing from people that I know of that are women and people of color, or even different cultural upbringings, and hearing some of the biases they face every day, just through third party. So, I would say I've been fortunate, but on the other end, I've been closeted. So I certainly haven't experienced what the world that's out there, or the injustices. So I don't really have much of an opinion on that.
Curious, to kind of build off that question, has there ever been a time where you've like maybe witnessed firsthand some of like a microaggression, and did you,
Now that you know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the past,
yeah.
I guess before you were privy to the term microaggressions, but did you ever feel like you witnessed something like that, and what was your reaction then, and kind of, I guess, what would you do differently?
I don't know. I'm sure of it, that I have, but I can't think of anything that really sticks out beyond what I hate to say, but what I see is kind of common in today's world. There's certainly people on LinkedIn that I follow, and that other people I'm connected with like and comment, and a lot of these discussions happen. If anybody lives in a neighborhood development and is part of a Facebook group on there, I'm sure you see it all the time, because it's just, I get disappointed, and I think it's beyond just the microaggressions, but it's just the lack of treatment of humans, and that happens everywhere, and I'm sure it's just exponentially happening in different areas. But I think I see just the lack of humanity, the lack of care, and the lack of kindness that happens are some pretty big drivers into why systemic bias happens. So to that point, Ryan, I can't think of anything particularly, but I'm sure maybe I'm just numb to it because it happens frequently. But there's some things that do just set me off. I have to mute a lot of those comments in these neighborhood groups, because my neighbors are pains in the asses. and it's just, they're just not nice people. Like, quit complaining that your order was wrong when you went to go pick it up at a food. Who cares? Like, that is just inconsequential. Yeah. So I'll take it from that. I don't want to make a comparison to that compared to what we're talking about, but I think there's some similarities in just the lack of kindness that exists in humanity today, unfortunately.
For sure. I was going to drop one little nugget of gold. People, if you're listening, be nice, because it shocks people. Like, I had, I told you, had some house issues. The first guy that was supposed to come out, I guess he had a family emergency and had to go pick up a kid from school. They didn't communicate that to me, so I was waiting at the house for them to get there, and like 30 minutes go by, and they told me they'd be there in like 10 minutes. So I called, and like, you could tell that they were like, oh God, we messed up. This guy's about to just like jump down our throats. And I was just like, oh, hey guys, no worries. I understand things happen. Do you have like an updated ETA, by the way? I'm working from home. It's not a big deal, but just to help me plan the rest of my afternoon. And you could just like, I could feel the tension lift off this like call center agent lady's shoulders of like, oh, thank goodness. He's not gonna ream me for this. And so I just feel like you put out into the world what you want. And if you're gonna be a jerk and be belittling to service people and so forth, then you're probably gonna, hopefully karma catches up to you, is where I'm gonna leave it at.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of karma, good and bad. So I've got a post that'll be coming out in a couple weeks about this, where it costs $0 to be nice, and it pays dividends in the ways you least expect it. And that's what I put out there, because it's true. It absolutely is true. Now, I'll be the first to say that I'm not always the nicest person in the world. I lose it. I recognize when I do, but I think that's something I try to aspire to be, is understand other perspectives and understand other experiences. And yes, there are people in the world that you just don't get along with. But I was fortunate again to have a boss that I looked up to at one point that was very positive, and I learned a lot about being positive and how that's a mindset. And it's more than just, words on paper or actions that you're taking, but it really is a mindset. And if that's what drives you to really learn and really understand perspective, there's some benefit that comes from it.
Sure.
It's really interesting. You mentioned kind of the point of karma. You talk about awareness and all these other things, because there's a lot of awareness now, whether you agree or disagree with the interpretation. There's a lot of awareness around a lot of these issues, and there's a lot of discussions that are happening. What's interesting to me is, and we did this when we did our first kind of a state of sales survey back in 2020, was released in 2021, and we're now about to release our next one. What was really interesting was we found this thing, we called it the awareness gap, which was basically, if you were a member of a minority group, you were significantly more likely to witness discrimination and harassment happening to other people than if you weren't. Now, this is obviously kind of pitting white men against kind of every other group who identifies with some sort of minority, but the numbers were significant. I think it was like something north of like 10x, possibly 20x.
Wow.
It was high. And it's a very interesting thing that I think is going to be worth a lot of study. And it's a bigger question than for sales, because I'm sure this exists throughout society, is like, once it happens to you, you see it. And we know we see this even with stuff like, oh, I just bought this car and now I'm seeing this car everywhere and I never noticed it before. There's a name for what that effect is. I forget what it is. My husband will probably yell at me from another room in a minute. But it's this idea of like, you've now understood you've now heard the term microaggression. So now you can be aware of it and you can notice it everywhere. But I'm curious, as someone who may or may not have been experiencing microaggressions, or may or not have experienced any form of discrimination or harassment in your career. Maybe you have, I'm not trying to assume anything, but as someone who's statistically less likely, what role do you think you have in making sure that the environment is safe for others to be free from this sort of behavior? If it's not happening to you, why, to be blunt, if
why get involved?
Why do you care?
Right. And I think that's I'm going to cite an argument that my wife and I have all the time. And because she'll say the same thing, it's like, this conversation it's about the kids. It didn't concern you. So why does it matter? And it's like, just because it doesn't concern me doesn't mean I don't care about it. Like there's a big scale of it. There's a difference between being up in somebody else's business and minding your own versus just general care. So I look at it to say, what's the responsibility of what's my responsibility in life? I don't know that that's really defined, but I know that I have opinions, and I think those opinions, it's okay to be shared. The difference between, you could talk politics and religion, right? The highest debated things, and the thing that gets you kicked out of bars all the time is how you debate on these two subjects. But the difference is, having opinions okay, but enforcing that opinion on somebody else is a little bit different. So my answer to your question is, I don't know if there's really a finite playbook to live by to when to involve yourself or when not to involve yourself. But for me, I guess I look at it to say, is it impacting somebody that I love or care about? Is it within my purview where somebody's speaking loudly and I can hear it? Therefore, it is meant for me, because you're speaking to me if I can hear it. And I guess those are some of the things that I would start to draw. Now, am I going to go interfere if two people are arguing in a grocery store? Maybe not. Maybe that's, from a safety perspective, that's maybe not the best time to interfere. But I think if there's open dialogue, open conversation, if you're sitting around a table and two people are having a conversation, I think it's okay to step in and speak up, but not from an accusatorial perspective, but from a engaging perspective. So I don't know if that answers the question specifically, Ashley, but it's more along the lines of, I think there is a thought process. And I'll say, for me, specifically being a white male, I think it's important that I have this type of thought process, because it shows that I'm aware and then I'm trying to make a decision. And again, going back to the thing I said earlier about having logic behind a decision, I can rationalize decisions to do something and decisions not to do something. And the benefit to that is at least I've got that filter. I've got that stopgap. You talked about that awareness gap. And I think for I would look at this to say white men are the ones that really have to focus this, because that awareness gap is real and it has to start. It's probably here as opposed to here, like you said, the 10x difference. But that's the filter of like, should I say something? Am I here? What am I hearing? Or am I jumping to an assumption or a conclusion? Am I making more out of something than it's not? And if I can get those stop gaps or those thought processes going, then I feel like that's a good step. And then my action is going to be based on that. And maybe it's not the right action, and that's okay, because we're not perfect. But as long as we can start like living behind a justification of something to say, I spoke up because I heard this and it sounded like this. And if you're wrong, then you're wrong, and walk away with your tail between your legs, and it's okay to be wrong. So I guess that's where I'll go with.
I have to call that out. I think this is something that some people are afraid of right now when it comes to anything DEI. It's okay to make mistakes. We have to let people make mistakes and learn from them. It's okay to, like I talk about this all the time in like sales training. Once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a trend. If somebody uses the wrong word, if somebody posts a list that's not very diverse, if it's their first time hiring a team for the first time, it's the first time. Educate, reach out with kindness. Hey, are you aware? Have you read this? Can we have a discussion? Second time, hey, has this happened again? And it's not our job to police everyone, but like approach from that point of kindness and hey, let's have a discussion and learn, versus I'm not trying to get into cancel culture or anything like that, because obviously there are extremes to this. Mm-hmm. But like, let's approach things with kindness and let people make mistakes and learn, because otherwise people are just going to be so terrified. They're just going to stay in the status quo because it's safe. And that's not how change is going to happen.
Or even worse, they're going to be more heels dug in their
That's what I was going to say, is you're going to come from a defense mechanism too, where it's now I'm so angry that it's less about the issue and more about my emotion. And I'm going to express that to even go further. So yeah, you're right, Ryan. Good call out.
Yeah, there's got to be some accountability on our behalf, the people that are advancing DEI and wanting to have these conversations too. I don't know. I feel like kind of wrong saying if we have to have thick skin, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm teetering like victim blaming, but we have to, if we're going to make it such a like, soon as you make one false step, you're banished to, Mordor. Then who's ever going to want to like even be vulnerable or even like maybe ask you like, hey, I messed up. I fucked up. Can you help me? When they fear like shit, if I even tell them I messed up, then it's going to go all over LinkedIn. My career is going to be ruined, so forth and so on. This kind of the big thing that frustrates me too is that it's, I don't know. I think of like the recent Netflix stuff and them telling people to like be quiet about, Dave Chappelle and so forth.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
I get where they're coming from. I get that can be hard to hear, but I wouldn't go work at a butcher if I was a vegetarian or
absolutely
a vegan. It's just like understand who you're working for in these companies, and if you feel so strongly about a position and that company doesn't align with it, and that's something that keeps you up at night and doesn't allow you to be your full self at work. I'm not saying that it's just easy to go find another job, but if you're working at Netflix or a tech company, you probably have the means to get another job. A lot more so than like a single mother with 4 kids that's working a cleaning job and gas station part-time after work and going, juggling 3 different positions. It screams. And, I guess from where I sit, what bothers me the most is like this liberal white savior mindset. So it screams like privilege when people are in a cozy Netflix job and something that just like rubs them the wrong way, they are up in arms about. And then, I've had experiences as a Black man where like I questioned some of the thing. I questioned pretty much everything. My dad was a Vietnam War vet, so he's like, don't believe everything you read. And, I grew up on Tupac, so I don't believe a lot of stuff. So this idea that like, whenever you question anything that comes from a certain side, I see it more so on the left, so I'm picking on them today. This idea that I don't know what's good for me, and that somebody that grew up in a gated community that went to college and read some books all of a sudden has all this worldly knowledge on how interactions go, and I'm advancing racism against my own people by questioning their almighty, stay where they're at. And it's like, okay, this isn't helpful. This doesn't, this actually makes you kind of seem more closet racist in a way than somebody that's just openly bigot racist. At least then I know where they're at, and I know how to like, I'm just going to steer away from that person more so than like somebody that kind of smiles in your face, pretends almost maybe to be an ally, and then as soon as you have a misstep, it's like they want to chastise you, or as soon as you challenge them on anything, then it's like talking down to you, you don't know any better, and so forth. And it's like, oh, so this is probably how you feel about all Black people. And that's why we're stuck in a perpetual loop of injustice.
Yeah.
You stepped outside of your box.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was just going to kind of do I saw a nice little opportunity to do a circle, but it all comes back to just having conversations with people. Like I'm dealing with processing a lot of things around the Supreme Court right now. Obviously, like a lot of, I think most women in the US and people who consider themselves allies of women, which should be everyone. It just comes down to conversations and empathy. And like, yes, it's a messy issue, and I'm not going to get into it right now because that will be another hour of me just straight on soapbox ranting. But like, if we could just have a conversation about what actually is happening with the people who are actually impacted. Like, I'm sorry, there are a bunch of men who don't have uteruses making decisions about women's uteruses. No, just no. The very fact that we had a lawmaker in the past decade say that a woman cannot get pregnant if she's raped, and honestly believed it, is horrifying in the extreme. That person has more power to legislate what happens to my body than I do. That's horrifying in the extreme. Putting aside politics and just going back to what we're talking about when it comes to different groups or leadership or figuring out these things, we have to be talking to each other rather than assuming we understand or know anything. I might be missing something. I might be misunderstanding. I might just be ignorant. The thing, I was talking with my mother about this the other day. It's like, I have no problem with, she was accusing me of being a little intolerant and a little bit of a snob, which I can be, I fully admit. I have no problem with people who don't know things. I have no problem with that. I have an issue with willful ignorance, with not just a lack of curiosity, but I don't want to know these things. I enjoy not knowing things, and I take pride in that. I want to understand that, and yet nothing will piss me off faster than that, because that's just antithetical to how I think we all should live and how we move forward as a society.
What about in that same breath, because I'm with you there, if those people have opinions? And it's like, if you're going to say, I don't want to know about it, I don't desire to know about it, okay, then don't have an opinion. And like, I'm okay with that, because I'm almost that way. I'm going to be the worst American in the world. Like, I don't vote every time there's an election. I'm talking about local and national. And it's like, at some point I want to research them, and other times I just don't. Like, when there's on the ballot, I don't know who a lieutenant something is. Like, I'm not going to vote, because I don't, what am I going to do? I'm not part of the party. I don't align to.
That's exactly what I say to my friends and stuff like that too. I'm a giant advocate. I do get out the vote drives. I'm huge for voting. So Ed, you're now on my list. The next time there's an election, I'm going to be knocking on your door.
All right. So I'm a prospect. You're going to convert. All right.
Gotcha. I'm going to get you. But what it's about at that point is removing obstacles. You don't have time to research. Great. I'm the first person. I used to love, I still do. I will like jump on Zoom calls with everyone else who doesn't have time to research these things. And because I'm a debate nerd, I will literally explain both sides of every proposition on a ballot and be like, okay, here's the pros and cons for each candidate. I'll walk you through it. We can get the whole ballot done in 30, 45 minutes. It is 30, 45 minutes to give some thought to it. You can go do some more research. I'll present both sides. But the way I present both sides, I am biased. These are my biases. I will try everything I can to knock them out in the next 30 minutes, but they're going to sneak in. Sorry. And I will tell you if I think someone's crazy, and please don't vote for them. But I'll tell you why, and you can disagree with me. But at the same time, that's my whole thing with my friends. If I find out you didn't vote, you are not allowed to complain. I will be like, I'm sorry, you do not, like, you did not vote. You do not get to complain about this president. It's stuff like that. So I don't have an issue with that, but it's stuff like that lack of curiosity, that lack of empathy, that lack of discussion, and that willful ignorance results in perpetuating so many negative stereotypes and messages and just things that genuinely hold us back as a people, that it's horrifying. And we see this, I mean, not to even take it out of politics and back into sales. We see this in sales all the time with, like, every time you see a clickbaity, like, try this to convert 20 times more prospects. No, that's not how it works. You have to be curious. You have to ask, where does that come from? Who are they using it? Who's their ICP? What's their product? What's their deal cycle? If all that matches, great. Test it and see if it works.
There you go. And
everything has to be tested.
That's my whole, I hate the data-driven society we're in, because I was fortunate years ago to go through Six Sigma certification, and Six Sigma focuses very heavily on statistics and sampling. And there are plenty of sampling methods. One of those is called a convenient sampling method. What is that? That's sending a survey out and telling people to fill it out. Well, guess what? The people who are filling them out, it's convenient for you because A, you have that contact info. B, they're probably close to your network and they know who you are, which is going to give them the springboard to go fill out the survey. That's absolutely the definition of a convenient sample. I don't care what your population is. I don't care if it's statistically valid within the 99% degree of accuracy. It doesn't matter if your sampling method. I can go stand outside of a library as people come in and come out and ask them, do you like going to the library? I can get 1 million people, and I bet I'm going to get a good sample. But I'm going to report that data to say, oh, well, 87% of the people surveyed love going to the library. Well, yeah, because I stood right outside of the freaking library. So that's all this data that's going on. Is I'm with you right there, is you really got to ask. And I think it's good to provide foundational information, but exactly like what you said, which is the missing component in a lot of arguments, is go test it on your ICP, go test it in your industry, go test it with your buyer, go test it with or without technology, go test it and then start to see, is it relevant? And then deviate from there. That's absolutely, I'm right there aligned with you.
Man, I'm with both of you guys. I have SDRs that'll be like, yeah, my big thing is consistency is a key to success, and progress over perfection. So if you are struggling on cold calls, then you probably need to slow down, maybe build yourself a little playbook. Some call it a script. I don't like scripts. I like the playbook that kind of takes you through.
Talk track.
Yes, talk track, perfect. But I'll hear like, yeah, I just feel like this isn't working. Well, I don't make business decisions off feelings. The data shows that this works. And if not this, then what? I always give them sure, maybe it doesn't work for you, but what? What then?
What does?
And
good call.
If they don't know that, then it's like, okay, well then let's test it. And usually it's like, okay, the what then is a lot more work than just doing eventually what works. And so it kind of weeds through the BS pretty quickly. So I love that approach.
And that's the beauty of the world we're in, is you have complete control for the most part to try different things. I love talking about this because I'm an overweight person and I love talking about weight loss. It's like, there's no magic bullet. It's really, really easy. It just is very hard. Calories in, calories out, plain and simple. I don't care whatever adaptation you want to use. There are plenty of ways to do it. You shouldn't take lessons from me because I'm an overweight guy, but in the same breath, it's just not science. So I may recognize that I have the answer, but am I going to go do it? Just like you said, is people are going to have opinions, but are they going to take it the next step to say, go execute it, go do it, and then assess the result? Or are you going to then point the finger at everyone else to say, no, it's this technology that was never it's just not working and it's causing more manual work, or it's you can't expect me to get a hold of CFOs at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, you can rationalize the day is done of why not, but like, let's focus on the why. So let's build it from that perspective. So good call out, Ryan. I think that's a good way to again, empowerment we talk about in the beginning with Ashley and the franchising of those business reviews. If they're empowered to do it, perfect. Go support them, go see how it works, but then come back to the drawing board to say, let's debrief on that mission. What worked, what didn't, can we deviate, can we get better? And that's how effectiveness happens. Back to what we talked about, Ashley, is communication, right? It's all communication. It all comes back down to that. It really is the fix.
It really is. And I'll say this, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people I find haven't been exposed to that way of thinking. It's just, I was told to run a playbook. I ran the playbook. It's not working. It's the sort of thing where they've never been asked, what do you think? They've never been asked, what do you want to do instead? It's literally a new muscle. The same way if you asked me to go lift 50 pounds, or maybe I'm not that out of shape, but if you asked me to go lift 100 pounds, I would struggle. I would not know how to do it at first. Well, I probably could, but it would be nasty and I'd probably hurt my back. There's techniques and skills involved. So I think as leaders too, if you're asking your people to do this for the first time, walk them through it a few times. What is that next step? What do you think? What would you change? Like, don't expect them to just be able to come up with this stuff.
And why? And why would you change? Like,
exactly.
To your point of emotion and data, why would you make that change? And if you're not sure, okay, then it's an opinion, and let's figure that out later. But
let's keep testing.
That's okay.
We'll keep an eye on it. No problem. Yeah, but
where I think if like the playbooks, to your point is, I made a post about this, is like, everybody talks about playbooks, and I think playbooks are good, but then is there anything that's taking it to the next level? And it's just like training. And actually, this is speaking to your world, is I can go in and train somebody anything, but what happens when I leave? That's where the execution happens. So how are you going to make sure that training stays and gets baked? It has to go with repetition, time and time again. You have to course correct. This is where coaching takes into play. There's a little bit of that ramp down and ramp up, but it's really the same thing of being able to deviate from it, but also make sure you're giving yourself due diligence. Playbooks are great, but if building a phenomenal revenue acceleration program were just a formula, then every freaking company would do it. It just doesn't work. So there isn't one.
Which is just why there are 50 billion different ways to lose weight and get healthy, because the answer is going to be different. Right. And here's the thing, it's not about getting an answer that is ubiquitous, that works for everyone, that is utilitarian. It's about not necessarily going niche, but it's narrowing in customer journey, buyer journey. What do your people need? What is the problem that you're solving? And how are you finding the people that have that problem? And then how do you help them solve it? Just getting hyper-focused, and alignment and communication. Whew, we hit a lot today. So
one thing that I want to add to that before we, go into a lightning round or anything exciting like that is, I think a big part of a lot of this is taking like that initial playbook, and then like if you are having struggling reps, what I did was like basically made like a cold call kind of like playbook meeting where I had all of them had equity in it. So I wanted them to be the experts. Essentially, I was crowdsourcing from my team what would work. And then I'd like, if I didn't like their idea, then instead of like, oh, this sucks, it would be more like, have you thought about this instead of this? And then like, they'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. So at the end of the meeting, it was like a 2-part meeting because an hour wasn't enough. I essentially had a bunch of items that they came up with and then they agreed to. And so then I can measure that on their calls, and it's not, hey, you're not running the playbook. It's like, hey, you're not being honest with yourself. This is stuff that you said would work, and now you're not doing it. So it's not like I'm, not doing what Ryan says. It's more so of like, I'm not fulfilling my promise to myself. And I feel like that is where I've been able to get the most ground and been able to have better execution from my team, because they feel like they're empowered. They feel like they're a key stakeholder in this like program that I've built, versus just, like it's Ryan's program and, they pay me. So I show up and make the dials and do what they ask. And that's just been like a huge turn for me. So I just wanted to add that in there. Just put a nice little bow on it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good.
All right. So given all of that, take a deep breath because this is a good one. We're going to end this episode the same way we end every episode, with our lightning round. These are a series of rapid fire questions. Nothing too heavy. Don't get stressed out by any of it. But we're going to start off the same way we do every time. So what is your morning routine?
Not to hit the snooze button. We'll start there. Really, it's pretty easy. Nothing too fancy. It's get up, get in the shower, get ready. I love having. I've grown somewhat addicted to these protein shakes that I make. IsoPure is the protein. It's a low carb one, and then I use almond milk and sometimes I'll add some peanut butter powder. Sometimes it's a spoon of Hershey's cocoa, but it's ultimately a pretty low carb, and it fills me up forever. So I love that. I go through tons of almond milk as a result. So that's becoming my new routine. Get up, shower, go do that, and then we'll see what the day faces. Sometimes I got to call at 8. Sometimes my first call is until 10. Sometimes I'm going with my wife to walk the neighborhood in the morning. And sometimes I do hit the snooze button, unfortunately. So that's the morning routine.
I love the walk. I gotta be careful. I got 2 big dogs in here. If I say that too loud, they'll
go crazy.
It's like Candyman. If I say it 3 times, they're like, poof, they just appear here.
My guys can tell when I'm signing off a call.
Nice.
If you're watching this on video, but you'll notice when I'm signing off, you'll see 2 heads start jumping up.
That's conditional training. You've conditioned them.
Oh, I know.
Absolutely. And
I talk to people every day about Pavlovian training, how to Pavlovian yourself. And I'm like, no, my dog's a Pavlovian.
Do you ever show the clip from The Office where Jim and Dwight, where he every time Dwight shuts down, it makes the window sound, the do, he hands him a mint, and he does that like for days on days on days. And then when he shuts the thing down, he doesn't hand the mint, and Dwight has his hand out, and he's like, what's wrong? So he totally trained him to hear the window sound of shutting down and that a mint was coming.
That's
so
awesome.
funny. So you got to start adding that, Ashley, when you start talking about that.
I will, especially because I've never been into The Office, but I know a lot of people who are, so I got to be able to drop that in.
There are so many relevant scenes there that apply in our world every single day. So maybe that's going to be. You gave homework to Ryan for the sales development playbook. Maybe your homework, Ashley, is going to be some episodes of The Office.
I have a friend who actually runs a podcast, assistant to the regional manager or something like that. Specifically about.
Is that Ryan?
Yeah.
Is that Ryan Reiser? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Ryan and James Bond.
And James, yeah, right.
So I'll have to ping him. All right, fine. Give me 5 episodes I need to watch. I'll go find them.
Nice.
Awesome.
I'll send you the link to that one.
Hey, Ed, pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
I'd say a boss that I was talking about earlier. I had 2 female bosses. One of them, her name's Miranda Collard. She's now like the head president of like the largest outsourcing company called Teleperformance. She's hands down had the biggest impact on my career, and she knows it. I've made sure that she's known it over the years. And the reason why is she came from what I learned under her was servant leadership. And at the time I was, again, in my like early to mid 20s and didn't really know what the heck that meant. And that kind of started cultivating under her, and then understanding unrelenting passion. She was a very passionate person. And it was, yes, of course, about outcomes, but it was less about outcomes and more about the work and kind of the journey that ensued. So I learned a lot under her leadership of how to be a better leader and understanding what really matters and giving a shit about what you're doing.
Big shout out to her.
Yeah.
All right. What's your pump up song?
Oh, so I feel like somebody just asked me this like 2 weeks ago, and I drew up. Actually, I think it was at some kind of event where we went around the horn, and I'm like, I don't even know. I want to say Eye of the Tiger, but that's like so quintessential, I think, in this world. But why I say that too is when I was in college, I was taking I don't even remember what the class was, but I built a PowerPoint presentation with where it was basically self-run, where I clicked the button and then everything went, and I used 3 songs in the background, and I used Eye of the Tiger to kick it off. So there were certain beats where like letters would drop down on the screen. I mean, it was it was produced pretty damn well. I wish I still had a copy of that, but it was, the whole presentation was probably 7 minutes, and I didn't do anything other than click it. It came up with things that had music going in the background, and that's what kicked it off. And I was hoping that would kind of amp up the crowd. So I'm going to go with that for that reason.
That's awesome. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier in your career?
Sales. Now that I'm in it, I resisted it for so long. I've gone to my old high school to talk to juniors and seniors about careers, and I've talked about the sales development profession. So Ryan, hopefully that gets me some kudos in your world, but I talk about the relationship between sales development and asking your parents for money. And like, there really is no difference. The only difference is you got a little bit warmer of a lead in your mom and dad than a true prospect. But I talk about how you open doors and how hard it is to open doors. And in this world of trying to apply for jobs or get into college or buy a new car, it's all about opening doors, and learning that skill is extremely, I would even volunteer to go teach a high school class on prospecting and cold calling and what it is and how it's applied in real world instead of just in the sales world. So that's one thing I wish I'd learned a long time ago.
I love that. All right. What book has had the biggest impact on your sales career?
Oh, I'm going to go with, I have to choose one. I have to just choose one.
You can do 2.
Okay, I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to go with Sales Development Playbook from Trish, and Keith Rosen's Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions. That was the book that I learned. We talked about Trish's book, which, as I was building a sales development team, that was really my guide. And I learned a lot from it, and comp plans, understanding the 5 whys, and starting to figure out messaging that aligned to each. So that was really pivotal for me. And I think it's probably, 10 years old now, maybe, since the book's come out, but still so relevant. So that's that. And then the other one, Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions, is it helped me be a better coach and understanding how to drive one-on-one sessions and what's the impact is. The impact isn't for you, it's for them. So it's for the employee. So have the employee run the agenda, have them set the tone. You've got some time to talk, but come from a counsel perspective. And that's really what one-on-ones are, and how you don't have to form fit a one-on-one to say it's a weekly one-on-one. Well, okay, but that doesn't mean every weekly one-on-one has to run the same. You can do one of those one-on-ones is going to be a monthly review. The other one is going to be a quarterly review, and we're going to block the same time or maybe extend it. We're going to follow a format, but the one-on-one is for the employee. That's their time. That's their time to talk to you, to present to you, for them to tell you what you need, and you're creating the avenue. That was an amazing book that completely shifted my thinking in how I work with leaders and how I help to coach leaders. And that's really I think it's one of the hardest things to do is coach leaders. When you're not doing the work, you're not managing the people who do the work, you're managing the people who are managing the people who are doing the work. You just get farther and farther away from it, and you got to figure out what's your core objective. And it's not how to sell, it's not how to market, it's not how to serve a customer, it's how the leader can be better. So that was a great book that helped.
I like that. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
I'm going to take this back to school and sports. So I tried a lot of different sports as a younger kid, and I started to gravitate towards a couple, soccer and baseball. And I was fortunate to go pretty far in soccer. I went even a little bit farther in baseball. And while I like those sports, some of the challenges that I faced of trying different sports was, as I got older, you're often, you're the one who doesn't, the least. So when you're 12 or 13, or 14 trying a sport that people have been playing since they were 5 or 6, you're often like completely, you're out of the loop and you can maybe get shunned for it. So I think that was in general, and I don't know if there's one person that was an ally as much as I just wish kids weren't assholes. And because unfortunately kids pick on people and it just really sucks for no apparent reason. So I remember trying, so we had, ice hockey wasn't really big when I was a kid, but street hockey was. So we had a couple indoor soccer facilities that on the off season turned the flooring into deck hockey or roller hockey. So I remember trying to play that, and there were a couple kids that were friends of mine that were awesome. And I was like, I could rollerblade and I could stick handle a little bit. I wasn't good. And man, did I get made fun of from them. And then I stopped after one season. So like, it's just one of those things where, why does it have to be competitive all the time? And why do I got to get picked on because I'm the new guy who at that time I was 15. I think I was a freshman in high school and trying it for the first time and I got shunned. So I just wish kids were allies a little bit better, a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more, hey, don't make fun of the kid who doesn't know what the hell they're doing, help the kid.
That's spot on. What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others today?
By speaking up and getting involved and putting my money where my mouth is. I've been involved with an organization called Girls Club, which seeks to give opportunities to newly promoted or aspiring promoted female sales leaders. I've been, since the start of that, Lauren Bailey asked me to be a mentor and I absolutely said yes. And I've done it through, this is my 4th generation. So 4th cohort, and then there was a summer camp. So 5 total sessions of being a mentor there. I was working with a gentleman by the name of Thomas Parbs. We're both involved in an organization called the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. He was a chapter president in Chicago. I'm the chapter president in Columbus. He did a women in sales event probably 3 years ago, right before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, he wanted to do one as well. So we combined forces. We did a Chicago chapter, Columbus chapter, and it was a women in sales summit. And then this thing just exploded and it wound up being less about Chicago and Columbus, and AEISP embraced this. A very well-known sales role model in the industry passed away several years ago, Barbara Giamanco. A fund was set up through the Sales Education Foundation. So that's what we did, is we looked at sponsors that would partake in donations to help fund that scholarship. So we did that, and it was just something a little bit more putting your money where your mouth is. Now, to that said, I think there's a lot more that I can do and I want to continue to do, but I don't need to be paid. I don't need publicity. I just want to help and step in where I can and help people get better.
I love that, man. You know, it's hard to get to escape the I want to get paid. We're in a capitalist society, so putting out that goodwill.
Yes,
you can get paid in karma.
Well, exactly. That's very true. And I have conversations today with people where I got to respect them for saying it, but hey, I don't want to take up too much of your time since this isn't a paid engagement. And I'm like, words are worth nothing. It's execution that's worth everything. So I'm happy to talk shop and give you all the tips in the world. It ultimately means nothing until you put it into place. And that's really where I help clients, is I help on the execution. Don't take my word for it. Like, let me put my money where my mouth is. So it's kind of the same thing. As I think karma will come back around, and the more open I am with some of that stuff, and I don't have IP on anything. So like, I got nothing to protect. And chances are it's stuff I've stolen from other people, like Ashley and all the other trainers out there. So it's stuff that's, good work that's out there and for the public to consume.
Sales has R&D. It's not research and development. It's rip off and duplicate.
Rip off and duplicate. There you go.
Highest form of flattery.
Yes.
Heck yeah. I do that quite often. Don't tell my team that. They think I'm really smart.
Yeah, we'll make sure that they don't hear this.
Well, the trick is you're smart in that what you pick to rip off and duplicate. It's not the ripping off that doesn't make you smart. It's you pick the right stuff to rip off and duplicate.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got a good eye for what's good.
There you go.
So the last question, what is your guilty pleasure after a long day?
Oh, geez. I'm going to get slammed by so many people for this, but it's a cigar and bourbon.
Yeah.
So and especially now that the weather's turning, I'm a cigar guy. We rebuilt our deck a few years back, and I have been getting every bit of use of it I can. My wife and I were just out there last night. She's not a big drinker, but I just love a nice day sitting outside, smoking a cigar and having a drink. So
What's your current favorite?
of which, cigar or bourbon?
Both.
So my current favorite cigar is, I'm starting to try a couple different Alec Bradley ones. I've gotten a couple sampler kits and I've started to like them. So I went to a place over the weekend and picked up a few. So I've actually I can take a picture. I take pictures of the labels so that I remember which ones I like. And I'm a nerd. I have a spreadsheet and I put the ones on there and I do like, not like. So I have a constant reminder and I'm starting to go down a path. So there's some different Alec Bradley ones, but I'm really loving the Padron 5000s. I used to really love the Padron 1926s and those are really good. But a friend of mine threw me a couple of these and I really like those. I like a really good smooth draw in a cigar. My go-tos are Diamond Crown from JC Newman and Cohiba Connecticut's I really like, and Ashton Cabinets. Those are Connecticut shade wrappers, very smooth, very mild. Those are a good go-to. So that's the cigar. On the bourbon side, I've got a friend that's doing exceptionally well as a distiller here in town. And shout out to Noble Cut Distillery. He's making a lot of good flavored whiskeys. And so I'm now drinking I bought two, a peach. He's much better than the Crown Peach. He's got his own peach whiskey, and then he's got a salted caramel whiskey. So I put those on the rocks, and that's a really good pairing with a nice mild cigar. So I'm really going there. I'm starting to get into some scotches, some of the 18-year scotches. I've got a Glenmorangie 18-year at home and a Glenlivet 18-year. So I'm liking those scotches. And then Basil Hayden and a Four Roses single barrel are kind of go-tos for me too.
You have to make sure. I was gonna say I'm gonna send you some recommendations for more cigars and whiskeys. My husband and I have really been enjoying the My Father Le Bijou.
Oh, okay.
Oh God.
So I've got a friend that swears by My Father, and I've only had the Don Pepin from the My Father line. And I think I had one other a long time ago before I started snapping pictures. So he's been telling me I need to get on the My Father bandwagon and starts. So Lejeune, you said?
The Bijou.
Bijou, okay.
Yeah, it's LE space BIJOU. I had to double check the name of it quick.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of Connecticut's too. I tend to do smaller ones just because I can't do a full cigar.
Right.
My husband can, but like I'll share with him and stuff. And yeah, it's a horrible, nasty, dirty habit, but at the same time, it's so nice.
It's a guilty pleasure. Yes.
Yeah, I got lots of whiskeys.
I haven't gotten into the cigars yet. A couple of my buddies I golf with, they're always like, "You want a cigar?" And there was like a time where I think I maybe like inhaled a little too bit, and my score went to the dumpster. I guess it shot up in golf. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm good on cigars." But you're not far from me, so I may have to just come visit you. You're about a 3-hour commute on I-70, and
okay.
If you're ever in Indianapolis, you'll have to.
I was going to say you're either in Indianapolis or Pittsburgh, because in Columbus I go 70 either way. So
you're not Indy. Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Go Chiefs. No.
Nice.
All right. On that note, we have to wrap this up. To Ed, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so great to chat. Couple housekeeping things. Where can people find you? How can people reach out? Yes, I'm all over LinkedIn. Please look me up, Ed Porter. My company is also on there, Blue Chip CRO, on LinkedIn, bluechipcro.com. I don't call myself a consultant, but I often, in the same breath as a professional service provider, I think I'm one of the few that puts pricing on the website. So my pricing is there because I tend to work with clients to say, stop making it hard for customers to understand what you do and how much they have to pay, put it out there. So I put my money where my mouth is. So it's all up there on what I do. So please connect with me. And if you do connect with me, I'm very critical about this. Please tell me why and where you found me. I love being able to reference this in messages that you heard me from the Other Side of Sales podcast. That's something that's really important to me. I'm limited on the people that I have connections with, not intentionally, but I like to be able to say, I know this person from here. And that's something I value in my network. So please do. I'm open to it, but put a note in. Brilliant. And on that same time, as always, you can always find the Other Side of Sales at othersideofsales.com, on Twitter at OSOS_pod, on Instagram at Other Side Sales, and on LinkedIn as well. As you can find Ryan, myself, and the rest of the Other Side of Sales team. Once again, this has been another episode of the Other Side of Sales. Thank you so much for listening, and we will hear from you next time.